So, thank you. Dr. Computer has been active in Myanmar education sector for more than 20 years. She has been an education advisor in an international agency for 5 years, overseeing national education programs. Prior to that, she worked in various roles at the Ministry of Education and the British Council, where she led national education reform projects, support to non-state education sector, enhancing quality in teacher education institutions, and continuous professional development of teachers. She has led and facilitated capacity building programs for government ministries, INGOs, CSOs, and HLDO. She is now doing an MPhil PhD at UCL IOE, University of London Institute of Education, with the aim of conducting education research on higher education in Myanmar. She is well experienced in education management and leadership through her work in Myanmar education sector and global education funds, having contributed to national project oversight, education system reform project, and improving learning outcomes for children. She is keen to see the betterment of Myanmar education and engages in education research, publications, and teacher support networks within her personal capacity. So without much ado, shall we have Teacher Kampyu? Now the floor is yours, Teacher Kampyu. Welcome. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mama, for your great introduction. I hope everyone can hear me. Good evening to you all. Good evening and Mingalaba. I'm thrilled to be with you all this evening, and I hope that things will be as well as they can be for all of us. And the topic that I would like to discuss with you today is inclusive education in Myanmar. And I just would like to add a little bit of my background information to you because I used to be an English teacher, because I know that this MMT-SOL event is attended by many English teachers. So I'm thrilled to be with you all again. I used to be an English teacher, and then I am very familiar with LTEC's ELT. And since 2012, I have been working in the wider education sector. And the purpose of this workshop is to share my experience of what I learned about inclusive education in the sector. But I must admit that I'm not a specialist on inclusive education. I'm sure that there will be a lot of participants who know the area more than me. So I would like to explore the area together with you. Okay, so let me share my screen. You see it?
Yes, Chair.
Yes, teacher. Okay. Let me go to the first slide. So today I would like to explore 6 areas together with you. And to be frank with you, inclusive education is a really deep area, so which can never be covered in one section. But at the same time, I'm hoping that we can at least touch the basics of it, and then we can explore further according to our interests. So in this slide, you will be seeing, first of all, inclusion. We need to understand what inclusion means. And then after that, we will try to relate that to education in the second topic, inclusive education. And then we will try to narrow down what inclusive education scenario is like for Myanmar. And then that will never be complete without us looking at the current situation of Myanmar education. So I would like to share a couple of updates on Myanmar education as it is now. And then I think as you all, as many of you all are teachers, we cannot end our presentation. We should not end our presentation or workshop without practical ideas of what we can do in classrooms to foster inclusive education. And then I have some tips to share with you so that there will be more inclusivity in our classrooms, whether we are English teachers or head teachers or policy makers. So this is the outline of my presentation. So let's explore these together with you. Okay, so this is a very, this is a very brief definition on inclusion. You can read it by yourself, but I have underlined some parts where I think are important. You will see that inclusion is a universal human right, and then it is to embrace all people regardless of who they are. And then it is about equity and giving equal opportunities without any discrimination and intolerance towards one another. So this sort of inclusion affects all aspects of public life, not just in our schools, not just in our families. It is in all areas. It is true for all arenas of life. So I just have a question to you. Are you happy with the definition? For me, maybe it is not okay to answer or shout out in a virtual session, but keep your answer with you. I will also share my answer. The definition sounds really nice, but at the same time, I feel that, there are the opposites of the definition, which I have experienced myself in many occasions. So whether that is true for you or not, we can also explore again. And then I would like to discuss one thing with you. It is about your own experience, where you feel included and then where you feel excluded, like examples of inclusivity and examples of discrimination. There will be very generic examples like HR rules, like you have to be a certain type of people, and then you have to be at a certain age, etc. So these HR rules are good examples of inclusivity or discrimination. And one very relevant example for now is that for today, in this MMT-SOL workshop, do you think we are inclusive enough? For me, I think it is inclusive enough because it is open to everyone who is interested. So that is the example, one good example of inclusion. But at the same time, if the organizers and I said that, the workshop is to attended by, only males, 40 to 50 years of age, single, Buddhist, Myanmar, and then are we?
I'm single.
So see, why single? Yes, people will say, why single? So this sort of all sort of absurdities can come into discrimination, but don't be surprised because I have experienced and I have seen that myself in my youth as well. So I would just like to ask one question with you. I think somebody is scribbling on it because he or she is not happy with the definition. That's fine. I just would like to see the chat. Just one example you have found.
Well, Sayas and Siamas, could you please stop doodling on the screen? Sorry.
Why are you scribbling?
Yes, someone, yes, please, can you? Yes.
Sorry.
Can you, someone is doing it. Can you please stop? So sorry. Yeah.
Excuse me, I think the system has been disturbed by the scams and all. So I'm seeing someone, Rahul Sharma, and I think it's an automatic term, and then it should be removed.
Lengua y dibujo. La profe mathématique. Problème, multiplication.
Kita tayo ito pinagula amon. Itsokli amon. Upay pag-eskwela. When I see Ebola, I'm feel very sad. That is why I say I want to become a medical doctor.
Des cautions de gosson à permettre de donner des savoir, des gars, dames respectables.
I do not think about my leg. I feel free.
The opening government team, the PM, the first speaker, I thought that you did a wonderful job of discussing a lot of different ideas and examples in a short amount of time. You talked about Finland and Canada and so on, and it was difficult to get that much content out in the 4 or so minutes that you spoke.
Sorry about that. Okay, now, what sort of inclusivity you see in the video regardless of poverty and race? Can you please type in the chat? Thanks, Tom. Thanks, Lisa. Yes, age, gender, disability. Yes, gender equality. Yes, poor kids can also learn. No one is left behind. Thank you very much for great answers. Thank you so much. And then we also note that these children, they have expectations and they have hopes to be having respectable careers and then to help parents, etc. So what is the last phrase that you saw on the video, if you remember?
Give your old child a fair chance to learn, or something like that.
Yes, exactly. Thank you so much. Give every child a fair chance to learn. So now, thank you so much for your answers. We now have some idea of what sort of school children will be happy in, and then what sort of school can be termed as inclusive. Now, let's look at the second video. Here in this video, it's also very short, and then you will be seeing benefits of inclusive education, like being inclusive is a smart investment. And what else can you note in the video? Let's watch it together. So apart from smart investment, what is the other benefit of inclusive education? You can also type in the chat. Yes, very good. Thank you very much. Great answers. So if there is inclusivity in schools, or if there is inclusive education, there will be, you know, societies which are more productive than ever. And then there will be less unemployment. Great. And then there will be higher economic growth. Better community means people are at peace with each other. There is harmony. So every good thing that we can desire for in life can be achieved out of inclusive education. So that's why I would like to remember, if you can't remember everything, the two things that I would like you to remember is that give every child a fair chance to learn. That is the first. And then the second part is to include all children in quality learning. So that's a key purpose of inclusive education. And then, as you can see, there are loads of benefits coming with it. People might think that if you try to reap benefits all to yourselves, you will be richer. It doesn't work that way. We need to share, and then we need to be inclusive. So this is what I learned out of those two videos. And then let's look at what that means for Myanmar. So as I have told you before, I have been involved in the broader education sector since 2011 or 12. And then, you know, all my years of life, these are the years where I first heard about inclusive education. There was the first mention of inclusive education in the 2014 National Education Law. And then you can access the links. I hope the organizers will be sharing the PowerPoints with you so that you can easily find the links and explore yourself more. So there is the National Education Law drafted in 2014. There was the mention of inclusive education. And then after that, based on that, there was National Education Strategic Plan. In short, we call NESP. And then in that first NESP, it had visions for access, quality, and inclusion in basic education. So the National Education Strategic Plan, it has a very comprehensive inclusive education approach to adopt, and then it aspires to address exclusion barriers based on language, gender, disability, and marginalized backgrounds. So why do I say comprehensive? Because you can see that it covers disability, gender, ethnic and linguistic groups, and indigenous groups, people living in rural or remote areas, and then people living in poverty. So everything has been considered in theory in those plans and laws. However, although NESP, the first phase of NESP is 2016 to 2021, it had inclusion as a focus. However, there is the lack of awareness regarding inclusive education and inadequate school and classroom practices. So the approach was not a success or was not possible to adopt because of those reasons. And then this finding was taken from the review of NESP, the midterm review of NESP, which was conducted around 2019-20. So after the midterm review of NESP, then the plan was made. And then the plan was there will be the second phase of NESP 2. Second phase of NESP, we call it NESP 2, and then that will cover from 2021 to 2030. The draft was almost ready in January 2021. And that NESP 2 was picking the recommendations from the NESP midterm review. And then it was, hoping to address more children to be in schools. And then there were also aspirations to expand teacher colleges. There were also strategies and budgets to support alternative education to be incorporated into NESP 2021-30. So you can see that the trend is the Ministry of Education and those stakeholders and policymakers, they did recognize that there was the lack of awareness on inclusion, and then there was not adequate resources. So they planned for the potential to increase the potential of alternative education. And although the recommendations were made, I'm afraid to say that right now they are not realized yet. And there were also consultations with different groups. And then these different groups also recognized that there were big gaps between plans and practices, needs and resources, required skills and capacities of those involved. And I put in a quote from Eden Center for Disabled Children, ECDC, that is the quote of Sayaji Uthaot. And then he said that there is a general lack of understanding about inclusive education among, among us, among education stakeholders, even the policymakers or decision makers. So not everyone is fully aware of what inclusive education is and what benefits it can bring. So he said that there is urgent need for greater awareness raising. And then he also said that this inclusive education should be part of teacher training, and then there should be offers of practical advice. And then we can't just offer advice. It has to be a multi-sectoral approach, like hand-in-hand coordination between ministries, between parents and communities, between schools and communities, etc., like including all stakeholders in the process. And then you can read about more on the reports of this inclusive education in the given links. What I would like to emphasize here is the general lack of understanding about inclusive education, because I must admit that when I first went into the wider education field around 2011, I myself thought about inclusive education, first heard about it, and I thought, okay, inclusive education is having more children with disabilities into schools. Actually, the inclusive education doesn't just mean having more children with disabilities into schools. It means a lot more than that. It is a lot wider than that, and then we need to do a lot more than now. So what can we do now? When these recommendations are stalled and when the NESP2 process itself is like a little bit paused, let's reflect on the current situation of Myanmar education. So the Ministry of Education and everyone who are involved in those activities of the Ministry of Education, they know that before 2021, before COVID, before the coup, before the conflicts, there were 9.8 million children in Myanmar schools. And then we just had the 2022 update in the new light of Myanmar. And then what was reported is the enrollment is 5.2 million, but the enrollment is just about registrations. And if we look at the actual attendance, it means 4.2 million. And then the figure can be broken down further into how many in high school level, how many at the middle school level, and how many at the primary school level, etc. And then the high school level test, high school leaving exam, we all know that before the events in 2021, the exam was usually taken by about 900,000 students every year. When you look at this high school attendance right now, not even the attendance, it doesn't even reach, the test taking exam students every year. So what is reported in the news is they didn't mention the old figure about how many children Myanmar schools had before 2021. They just quote 5.2 million children as the total figure. And then compared to 5.2 and 4.2, the report said that there is 81% attendance in schools. However, I must say it is a distorted figure. And I noted there is a terrifying gap, meaning that more than 5 million or more than half of the 9.8 million children in Myanmar have dropped out of schools. And the newspaper also said that out of about 50 something million population, only 3 million are graduates. So we can see the dire situation Myanmar education system is in, about very big dropout rate. And we don't know what is happening to those kids who have dropped out of schools. And then the quality of education is likely to suffer because of the teacher workforce greatly reduced than before. So what we can see is Myanmar is facing a triple or quadruple crisis. Why do I say triple? Triple because first it is affected by COVID-19, and then the coup, and then the conflicts. Why do I say quadruple? Because even before that triple crisis, Myanmar's quality of education is poor. And then we can see that in the regional standardized tests, how Myanmar students are performing against other regions. So the learning quality is already low before the crisis. So we can see a concerning situation for Myanmar. So in this situation, what aspirations can we have in the current situation for inclusion? And can we also think about what can be achieved in current Myanmar education context? So this time I would pause a bit and then I will ask somebody, not I think one or two participants, to hear their views or their suggestions on what we can do. So let me pause here, and then I would like to invite one or two from the participants to share your suggestions.
Are we supposed to answer now?
Yes, please. Can you please say your name?
Yeah, my name is Pituka, and I am a youth who is really dedicated to education. From my point of view as a youth, the current situation on Myanmar education is really poor, and it's just like having a terrible situation because of important. That's why the first thing is I'm really appreciate and grateful for like organizing such kind of events by MMT Seoul or other like kinds of organization. And if we can promote their quality of the teachers, and if we can push the teachers to focus on the inclusivity, and our education system will be higher than we normally have. And yeah, so during this time, because of the internet connection or something like that, inclusivity education is a little bit like far more difficult to implement, before COVID and before Q. That from my perspective, I think we should provide curriculum which will be available for everyone, for those whose connection is not really good, and we can discuss with their the community youth leaders who are working in different situation, different places. And after that, we can provide for example, we recorded it, and after that we can send, their like such kind of projectors, lecture, the facilities that will be needed for such kind of places. Yeah. So actually there are lots of things to suggest and lots of things to consider to be much more inclusive in education. That I think that's all because of the time limit. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kopietuka. It is as if you know my thoughts. So almost all problems arise from lack of inclusion. And then we can't wait for all policies to be in place and all curriculum readiness to be in place. As you mentioned, I greatly agree with you that teachers are crucial for attitudes on and awareness of inclusion. As I mentioned before, I had very poor knowledge about inclusion. And then youths and teachers these days are in a far better position than me, because they have had exposure to, openness, and then they have had periods about, inclusive learning environment. So we need to rely on those youths and teachers for better attitudes and awareness of inclusion. And I must say that, in our days, we have been exposed to only limited history or heavily censored history, heavily censored readings. So for me, it was very hard to see and to recognize discrimination even when I see it, because I have been exposed to a kind of a discriminated past. So I think there is the chance for teachers to be more open with their students, and also to be really leading the pathway for inclusive education. And I said that I would like to listen to at least 2 participants. Is there somebody who would like to share his or her views? Anyone? Yeah. There are also teachers who are putting their great ideas in the chat bar. Yes, that's true. Okay, so if there is no one who would like to verbally share their thoughts, let's move on with what we can do for inclusive education, the practical ideas. And I think, I must say, this is just my first thought. I think the most important thing is to reflect on own attitudes towards inclusion. And, I'm ashamed to say that I had very uninclusive thoughts in the past. And it was also because of limited exposure I had. At one point, I would be agreeing with MOE officials who would say to me that, Sayama, it would be very hard to be inclusive for children with disabilities in our classrooms. We are struggling to provide education even for children without disabilities. How can we be more inclusive? Because we are already struggling with limited resources. Then I would say, yes, of course, it's true. But later, I found out that I was totally wrong, and then I'm greatly ashamed of myself that this sort of attitude that I can't do it, it is not possible. That is the sort of attitude that we should not have when we want to be inclusive. And then this is just one small example about children with disabilities. There are lots of attitudes that we have, and consciously or unconsciously, towards some sort of, towards some groups of people, and then towards some sort of ideas. So we need to reflect on our own attitudes towards inclusion. And then the second thing I thought about is we need to raise awareness. And then in short, there is GEDSI. Luckily, we have been seeing a lot of of, advocacy for GETSI, gender, disability, and social inclusion. So when we talk about inclusion, it's not just about disability, it's not just about gender, it's also about social inclusion, which encompasses of, problems. And then we also need to expand our horizons. Let there be questions towards all policies, practices, and traditions. So we can question, why does this policy not cover inclusion? Why why our past HR practices were not that inclusive? And I can share you one more example. When we were university students, there were my friends who were really smart, who were really bright, but they could not enter into professional universities, saying that they are the NRC card they hold is different from ours. So all things being equal, they are discriminated. So we need to look at all policies, all practices and traditions. Why is it so? And then we need to study history. And then study, by that I mean not about the history that you can find in textbooks. Look beyond the textbooks, study real history so that we can have fair view towards each other. We have doubts towards each other because we don't know each other. So if you want to have fair views towards each other, we need to learn more about people. And then it doesn't have to be very dry history. You can learn history in other interesting ways as well. And then being English teachers, what I would like to share with you is these days, I quite enjoy reading, novels like the novel that Pascal Coudray, he wrote, The Land of the Green Ghosts, a very fascinating novel. I would recommend that. And then prior to that, I was reading Wendy Loyon's Daughter's Memoir of Burma. So please read those interesting novels as well to better understand the history. And then in the classrooms, I think we should co-construct knowledge together. We are not, holding supreme knowledge. Sometimes students know better than us, a lot more than us. So we need to consult with them, and then we need to find a way together and to learn about our own identities. And the other thing is we need to accept diversity. Let there be respect to all with no labeling and no bullying. In classrooms, teachers should not be encouraging or joining in labeling people or like Kalamali or Kalali. We should not be doing that. So what else? I would like to hear from you as well. Just one or two ideas. So come on. Anyone who would like to share what sort of inclusive practices that we can use in the classroom?
Can I share it as well?
Of course, please.
Yeah, thank you. I normally use some kind of activities in my room to promote inclusive education because some of my students are, are like from, not a very rich family. Some are from a rich family. Sometimes there can be a gap between these rich students and, not very, the children who have like financial problems or difficult situations. What we can do is that to put the lessons or, the projects that will promote, inclusivity. For example, if while we're teaching English, we can choose a topic about, can everyone, should everyone have a chance to learn in a classroom? And for example, what I do is that some students are very excellent in my classroom. That I normally give equal chances to everyone. For example, there may be 5 students in my classroom. So that's why I asked one student. After that, I asked another student. So I just wanted all the students to know that everyone needs to have an equal chance, and they need to know how to sympathize and how to understand other feelings. And I think it's one of the good ways to promote inclusive education from the perspective of teaching something. So something like that. So that's my idea. Thank you for that.
Thank you again. This is really, really helpful. Yes, teachers should be very positive with the children, and then let every child participate. And then also we need to try that some students will be very active so that they won't dominate the others all the time. Others should also have a chance to participate in the activities. And then I have been seeing very good ideas in the chat as well, like understanding about yes, and teachers need to integrating inclusive education in the curriculum. I totally agree, because for me, I have 2 daughters, and then of course I have been observing them, how they learn at school. For me, the priority is not for them to win every prize in studies, for them to, you know, learn how to live in a harmonious way with others, and then not to bully each other, and then to respect each other regardless of age difference. That will be my priority. I think learning how to live together, that is also one of the pillars of education. Learn how to live together. So I wouldn't mind not my daughters failing their studies if they can do that well. Yeah. Yes, lifelong learners. And then so very good discussion. Yes, teachers are very crucial to nurture good citizens. So, you know, as we all know, we are in a very good and special place to nurture good citizens. And we have been seeing a lot of conflicts, a lot of, you know, hatred around us. And I think education can help address those things. And I think the root of all these problems can be found in the lack of proper education. Okay, so let's move on. What else we can do? Thank you so much to you all for your contributions and inputs. Yes, yes. Yeah, the curriculum will never be complete because teacher is the walking curriculum. Of course, teachers should never make fun of students' mistakes. Yeah. Okay, so what can we do now? As Sandy has mentioned, teachers need proper knowledge and training to make sure that the classroom is inclusive enough. So this is about teaching courses that you can access for free. And then I like FutureLearn because I did some courses with FutureLearn myself, and then I found them really beneficial. And since they are free, I think almost all of us can access as long as we have internet access. And then you can see that learn how to encourage diversity and inclusivity in your classroom. And then these courses are short. I know everyone's attention span is very short these days. So we need short courses, and then we need to be flexible because we have a lot of challenges. So we have to make sure that the learning for us is also flexible too. So please go into that link if you have time, and then please do the courses if you want to find out more about how to be an inclusive teacher. So that's just about FutureLearn. And as you all know, FutureLearn is actually not tailor-made for, you know, particular country, but I can also share you with some other resources which would be really good for Myanmar teachers. So there are very useful modules on inclusion, and then these modules are developed in Myanmar context, and then they are also available in Myanmar language. There is both Burmese and English version available, and then that is available on the Facebook right now, Facebook page of Tree Project Myanmar. And then there are altogether 15 modules. And then when you look at the titles, you will be very interested. So let's have a look. This is how the page looks. So when you get into the Facebook page of Tree, you will see like that. You can access these modules. And then the title is very clear, inclusion. And then it starts from the basics. What is an inclusive school? What is an inclusive classroom? And what is an inclusive teacher? And then you can also train, you know, if you are a teacher educator, you can use a facilitator's guide to train your teachers or volunteers who would like to be inclusive in their classrooms. And then module 2 is knowing your learners. Of course, we need to know our learners really well. And again, there is a facilitator's guide and participants book. Both are in English and Myanmar versions. And one thing to note is that only these 2 modules are available for full downloads at the moment, because the other 13 modules, they will be accessible from the end of March. So you will have them, we just need to wait a little bit. So these are the other modules. Planning learning outcomes for all. So there has to be an outcome. We can't teach without aim. And then participating through learner-centered approaches. We all are familiar with how learner-centered approaches can be, but you can be more in-depth here about how learner-centered approaches can be for inclusive education. And I like module 5, creating a positive learning environment. Children and everyone learns best when the learning environment is happy and fun. And then about effective questioning and feedback, as one participant mentioned, how to handle students' questions, etc., and how to ensure active participation. And peer, cooperative, and collaborative learning, as I mentioned before, co-constructing of knowledge together with the students. And there are a lot more, supporting all students through differentiation. That's the module 11. And I think, module 10 is for those who would like to know more about legal framework and policies around inclusion in Myanmar, if you want to quote them or if you want to make reference to them. And students, they learn in different ways, different styles. We can't assume that, all 5 years old will learn in the same way. It is never so. And then there will be specific learning difficulties. We need to identify them in the right way and then support in the right way. And then how to manage behavior in a positive way. And what I like most is about assessment for a student achievement. So as we all are teachers, we like giving tests. So it should be a flexible assessment to see how far we have progressed. So this is about the modules that you can see on 3 page at the moment. Okay, so these are about the practical things. Now we are about to wrap up before we open the floor for a few minutes of questions and answers. So I would like to ask some participants who haven't shared ideas with us before. First question is, what do you remember from the session? Just one participant.
Inclusive education?
Yes, anything you remember from the session.
Why discrimination?
Yes, there is both inclusion and discrimination around us.
Like giving a fair chance, giving every child a fair chance to learn.
Very good point. Yes. Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you for sharing. And then, yes, I can also see very good points in the chat. Yeah, disability should not be a reason to be excluded. So anyone who would like to share one key takeaway point, only one, after watching, after being with everyone and with me for this hour, what will be your key takeaway point?
Okay, may I?
Yes, of course, please.
Yes, inclusion is important in education. Being teachers, we shouldn't wait for the policymakers or the curriculum. We ourselves have to help our students to give inclusive education in the classroom practices as well as in our lessons and our aims and goals. That's what I get it. And inclusion is important. This is what I want. Thank you, Kamsi, for sharing.
Thank you so much. Yes, this is a really an extremely important point. Policies will always be ongoing. They will never be complete and perfect. Curriculums, they will always be reformed. There will not be a ready-made perfect curriculum for us to adopt for every kid. So we teachers are the best resources, and we are the most important people or most important part of inclusive education. We can be inclusive right now, and then we can be as inclusive as we are. So I would like to encourage every teacher to be as inclusive as possible, and then to find out more about inclusive education. If there is the chance, I would like to explore together with you as well, because I don't know much about inclusive education. There are a lot of areas that we can explore together. Okay, thank you so much. And then if I am to share my key takeaway point, as I said once, I would like to reflect on my own attitudes on inclusion. How inclusive I am. Am I as really inclusive as I think I am? So I might have some, misconceptions myself. So I need to clear that up. To do that, I need to know the history. So let's read more on history, real history as well. So that is the wrap up. But before we go to the question and answer session, I would also like to show you one thing. This diagram or picture, it gives me a lot of thought. We are, quite aware that, okay, we should not be discriminatory based on gender. We should not be discriminatory based on ethnicity or race or sexual orientation, nationality or religion, ethnicity or language. What is important to me is thinking styles. Of course, some people will have very different thinking styles from me. Should I be thinking that these people are really bad, I will never be talking to them? I used to think like that, but now I think we need to be, if we want to be all inclusive, we need to make sure that, we are not discriminatory based on thinking styles as well. And the second thing is about perspectives. Of course, people will have different perspectives. If your perspective is not the same as mine, then should I stop talking to you? So of course, these things are really hard to practice in life, but I think these are also what we can consider. And then what is our real tolerance level towards inclusion? So that will be my sort of end message to you. And so that is all about, today. And then I would like to open the floor again for any final questions you have. I'll stop sharing now. Any questions? Or anything you would like to share? It doesn't have to be questions.
I have a question.
Yeah, Itu is raising the hand.
Okay, so yeah, and then I also heard somebody saying I have a question. So let's go one after the other. So Saya first. Saya, where do you first?
Okay, thank you for letting me in. Listening to your presentation, just I'm reflecting myself, and I have these two things. I might sound a bit far-fetched, but what I was thinking is, like, we are talking about giving chance for all type of children to come to classrooms and schools. So should we define or should we confine education to schools? Rather than like confining the education to schools, extending it to other possible places where the children can learn. And in continuation with that, addition to enabling teachers, supporting teachers, what about enabling parents to help their children to learn? In different ways, probably at home, at work, or in any situation. So these are the things which comes to my mind, thinking that rather than trying to bring children to classrooms and schools, giving them more chances and occasions for them to learn in different situations. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sia. You have great answers in your questions, like expanding the horizons. So we should not be defining that children are learning only in schools. This environment is very reflective of the expanded horizons. Children are not learning in schools. Children are learning in every way they can, sometimes virtually, sometimes at home, sometimes from parents, communities. And then, you know, it is really good to see that sort of diversity, because in the past we used to feel that I must go to school, I must pass the metric exam. That is my only, you know, one and only path to education. Now I have been seeing lots of children learning in very diverse and flexible ways, and then they are taking different sorts of exams. Some are taking IGCSE exams, some are taking GED, as long as they are learning and then they are making useful with their lives and then marching on towards a respectable career, I think we will embrace that. So I totally agree with you that we should not define learning in schools. We should, you know, expand the horizons. Thank you so much, Sia, for your great contributions. So let me also call upon another participant, Kopietuka, please.
Thank you, teacher, for your wonderful and insightful presentation. And I'm really deeply thankful for attending this wonderful event. And I really appreciate and really thankful MNT Seoul team and for giving all the teachers a chance to learn more about inclusive education. As for me, at first I thought inclusive education is, you know, not a very broader thing. And after attending this section, I feel like that to utilize their practical ideas of inclusive education, we might need to know more about the history, the attitude of the learners, and the environment which are affecting to the, you know, to the community, to the learners who are in this like such kind or like different communities. Yeah, that's what I got from this event. And I have a question for you, teacher. So my question is that actually I was a little bit late today, a little bit, maybe 10 minutes late. But my question is that you learned about education at UCL or ULC. I'm not sure about that, at London. So could you share about it more? And it's a self-funded scholarship or a self-funded or a full-funded scholarship? Or what are the chances, what are the opportunities for the teachers who are really into upgrading their teaching and like learning and polishing their abilities at such high or like a big country called London, called like UK, or like a big place called London? So could you share it with everyone? I just want to know about that.
Thanks, yeah. First of all, I couldn't agree more with you on the importance of flexible learning and then teachers being crucial for students. You have all seen that 5 million children have dropped out of schools. That is very worrying and concerning for our future. That was because schools were not inclusive enough, and then just not schools, the environment itself is not conducive for inclusive learning. We must address that immediately. And then we can address inclusion only when we ourselves had exposure of inclusivity. For example, as I mentioned before, when I first recruited as a young tutor, you know, the job ad will say, you have to be Myanmar, Buddhist, etc. So I thought, oh, that's normal. So that's normal, you know, HR process for everyone inside Myanmar. And then at this job, I was recruited without the recruiting officer knowing me as male or female, knowing me, not knowing my age, not knowing my gender, and then they just look at the skills. So after being exposed to inclusion like that, I would like to promote this sort of practice across everywhere so that, you know, people know what real inclusion is. And then I am not discriminated at the workplace because I am Myanmar or Dayo or Kala or Chen or Kachin. No one talks about that. They talk only about the skills. Can I perform well in my job or not? That's all they care. So I think that sort of thing should be exposed to our kids. And then on your question about UCL, of course, there will be loads of universities which are popular, which are famous. At the same time, there are also very good, open and free resources. I must say they are the same as long as you want to learn. And then as long as you, of course, sometimes we need to have proofs that there is the qualification from an accredited university, but I think these things will become less and less important in future. As long as you excel in what you do, and as long as you have the right competencies for the role that you are playing, these, big name universities, I think the role might fade out in the past, especially in this virtual learning environment. So it doesn't mean that I'm disaccrediting UCL or IOE. They have very great resources, but at the same time, it can be sometimes, quite, difficult. For example, that is my own experience. Right now, I am at the MPhil PhD level. To be frank with you, I'm not sure whether I can complete that MPhil PhD to the end, because through conflicts and coup, I lost the scholarship, because the foundation that provided me with the scholarship has ended its role in Myanmar. I cannot fund it on my own. It's a very expensive course. So right now, what I'm acting is like a kind of fellowship to the university. And then they will let me complete my MPhil PhD in 5 years or 10 years, as long as I'm patient. That is also being inclusive of them. They don't tell me that get out after 5 years. They tell me that you can come back in any time from the point you left off, and then we will still welcome you. So that's the sort of inclusion we would like to see, we should be seeing in our education system. We shouldn't be kicking students out of schools just because they can't pay, or just because they lost they failed one subject. We should always be opening up opportunities for them. So I like UCL because of that. They told me that as long as you are willing, you can come back anytime, even if you are a 70-year-old or 80-year-old. So that's what I like about it. But to be exact in your question, I can share more with you. And then I can also share my email with you all, so that in case you have specific questions that you would like to hear from me, then I can put it in the chat bar so that everyone can mail me. Anything else?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Okay, I saw another hand from Gong.
Thank you, Ma. Thank you very much for the presentation. And I've taken away with the your project, tree project, and it's very helpful for the education sector, I believe. And I just want to know your opinion about the rising cost of educational services and the accessibility to the educational services as well. So it's an important part of the inclusiveness for all sorts of work. All walks of life, from primary education up to the higher education level. And so there are also materials and resources that we can learn from, like which you said, from peer-to-peer learning, and also home learning and home-based learning and all. So there are many resources available online and offline. And for formal education, then we have sent to the children to school, and there is a cost for many people. And many people are now living under the poverty line. And so how could we solve it as a problem? Many people are now financially challenged. and also for how do you think that it's the best way to bring illiterate children on board, on the platform of educations, maybe informal education? and also, giving them, providing them with confidence and capability that they are educated somehow. Thank you.
Okay, Gao. Thanks. Yes, I think these problems we will always be facing. Children with, disabilities, children from poor socioeconomic backgrounds, and of course, the online learning will never reach some marginalized communities. So in that case, we cannot ignore traditional learning as well. Like we will need to complement children's learning with offline materials, and then these offline materials have to be distributed and delivered by local organizations who knows the context. I'm answering based on my experience with IDPs, internally displaced people. So they are always mobile. It is very hard to pin down those children and give them an education. So that's why I'm hoping for a very flexible learning pathway, and then standardized exams. And when I talk exams only one necessary. And then we also need to have right level of expectations. So for children, for example, from those IDP camps, I can't expect them to complete the matriculation exam, in the same way as others. For me, my expectation is as long as they are learning something, they would be, I think that would be the priority. Of course, I would like them to, take exams and pass and then get careers, but sometimes things are, very difficult. And then there are factors beyond education affecting those populations, but we cannot just give up. We will need to, ensure that these children are at least learning something. And then, of course, it is sad to see those children, learning the same thing. One, they don't have any more materials. So we need to make sure that materials are delivered to them and then delivered in the right way. Sometimes they lack, properly trained teachers as well, but we cannot underestimate them. Those volunteer teachers, they have the keenness to support those children. I think that's what most important in teachers. They are trying to make those children learn as much as possible. So that's why I never look down on volunteer teachers or facilitators, because they have the passion and then they have the will to make things work with whatever they have, with whatever sort of facilities they have. They are making children learn. So we need to respect that. And it is the responsibility of UN agencies and also CSOs and also donor agencies to make sure that these children are learning as much as possible. And if I may go back to the point about exams and assessments, we shall not be tying children down to assessments and exams. We should be looking at their skills and then their sort of competencies. And then that was also the vision of the previous Ministry of Education. When they talk about alternative education programs, in one of the slides that I showed, they were talking about, transfer programs. So children from very difficult contexts, they can't learn properly, but at the same time, they can join bad schools or take exams as long as they meet certain criteria. They were about to set those criteria. It was just that those recommendations were stalled, and I haven't been in touch on those things lately because of the context as well. So I'm hoping that these things will be picked up again. So my summary will be that education shall be a priority for the government, for the ministry, for the teachers, and for all the families and communities. So we need to make sure that in every way possible. In some cases, there will be very challenging circumstances which we cannot overcome, but at the same time, something is better than nothing. We will keep on walking. So I think that address your question. I know my answer is not exact, but that is the best I can do in this situation. And I have told the organizers that I won't take more than 1 hour and 15 minutes. but I think I can take at least one more question before we wrap up. So any last questions, any last thoughts to share? It seems like nobody wants to be the last because they are scared to become a Byoji or Lubyoji. Okay. Oh, yes. Okay, very good. One last question from Saya Yeminto. Saya, please.
Yes, teacher. First of all, I would like to say thank you for sharing the great knowledge, teacher. Okay. According to the data you have presented, teacher, there are many students and there are also many teachers who are away from school now. Okay. Personally, okay, how would you like to advise or suggest them to continue their educations or teaching learning process?
Thank you, Saya. I have been in touch with some very good-willed friends and expatriates who are helping those teachers. And also there are also, groups formed among those teachers. The first advice will be to make sure that the social and emotional well-being must be, good. You must really take good care of yourself because these are really tough times for all of us. But you must also be strong and keep faith in the belief that you have done what you think is right and you shall try to benefit the communities or the children from wherever you are. As Saya Ueju said, schools are not bounded by four walls. It can be anywhere. And if you have passion to be a teacher, you will be a teacher wherever you are. No one can take away the title of teacher from you unless you let it go. And I think you should also keep trying. And then I think that's why emotional and social well-being is very important. Don't ever give up. And then don't ever feel small because there are people who are very proud of you and then who will be very willing to support you. So keep faith and then be a good teacher as you were before and as you are now. And I think there will also be better days to come.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay, I think you have had enough of me for today, my long-winded workshop. So thank you so much for bearing with me. It's really, really nice seeing you all, the teacher Ipwe, teacher Lisa's, people that I have been missing. So it's really good to see you, even on the screen. And then I wish we could get back to the days of seeing each other face to face, shaking your hands and hugging you. So we all are teachers. We are a united force. We need to help each other in the best way possible. So don't lose heart, and then let's keep on with our battle. Thank you so much to you all. Now I hand back over to Mama May.
Thank you so much, Teacher Kai Hugh. Thank you so much for today's section. So insightful and so thought-provoking. And now I know that everybody, before we go to bed tonight, will have thoughts coming to our mind, and we have hopes for the future, for tomorrow and for the future not so far away from us. Okay, so as usual, thank you very much, the participants. Okay, you have made it at the event, and then your comments and your questions, and give us some pause again, and also Teacher Kai Pyo especially for your time and for your sharing, and I'm sure that you'll come back again to us with more valuable thoughts and ideas in education. And last but not least, I also like to thank Streamline Education Center for the Zoom sponsor. Okay, so if you have no more questions, here I have a question. Have you done your survey? We have given you the survey link here. Please fill in so that we can send you the certificates. Okay, and we also sent you the PDF version of the today's PowerPoints.